Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also help the show out by visiting thebittertruth.info, I-N-F-O. And there you can hook up to the Patreon page if you want, which is also patreon.com/thebittertruth. And if you don't want to do that, you can also get some fabulous swag to make your life better. My guest today, friend of the show, she's been on before, and we love her. We know her. Activist and integrity-filled human being, Cindy Sheehan. How are you?
Thank you, Abe. It's nice to be on again.
Hey, listen.
You were recently on my show.
I was recently on your show,
Yeah.
and it was about 3 days before the big whoopsie because I was like, it's not going to happen. He's not going to. I guess more smarter people figured out that he might have. I had no idea that he would. And I don't know, how I was supposed to take anything the U.S. tells me beyond with, an entire jar full of salt, right? Because they've lied us. Yeah, they've lied us into everything else. But what have you been seeing since the Great Invasion?
Well, I think that we weren't wrong about thinking that Putin might not invade, because he has been provoked for years by the U.S. and NATO. And I mean, we can just look back to 2014 and the Maidan coup and the U.S.'s support of installing neo-Nazi sympathizers in the government of Ukraine, and building more and more NATO bases around the borders of the old Soviet Union. And so, first of all, NATO should have collapsed when the Soviet Union collapsed. But still, It's still there, getting stronger, getting more money, doing the bidding of U.S. and global imperialism, right? And so we were right to think that since Putin had been so restrained in his response to what was happening, that he would continue to be restrained. And I'm not blaming Putin. I don't support an invasion. But, he had way more reasons to go into Ukraine than the U.S. ever had to go anywhere, really.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
World War II, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, yes, so Russia did go into Ukraine, and we know that the 8 years that the Obama regime, under the direction of Biden, who was kind of in charge of the Ukraine operation with the State Department, Victoria Nuland, and John Kerry was Secretary of State at the time, that they were creating the conditions to what's happening now. They installed a government that was like I said, sympathetic to neo-Nazi ideals. The Ukraine has a long history of being sympathetic to Nazi ideals, right? And so since then, the Azov Battalion, which before 2014 was a paramilitary group, has become a part of the Ukrainian military. They've been a bombing and murder campaign in the Donbas region of Ukraine. Luhansk and Donetsk particularly killed thousands of Russian-speaking Ukrainians during this time period, correct? And we know that as soon as the coup happened, that region, Donetsk, Luhansk, I don't know really how to say it, Crimea.
And Odessa.
Right. Voted to leave Ukraine, to become independent republics. Ukraine obviously didn't recognize that. And after 2015-14, when they had the Minsk agreement, they agreed that the Ukrainians weren't going to recognize them as separate republics, but they wouldn't oppress them or, do anything to harm them, which they broke those agreements, and they wouldn't join EU or NATO. And then I guess that was Putin's line. when they started making, noises like they were going to join the EU and NATO.
Right.
And then that would just bring NATO bases and advanced weaponry even closer to Moscow.
Right.
Right. Moscow is only like 500 miles from Kiev.
Right. Yeah, that's the, and to your point that and a second ago I said Odessa. I was thinking like rattling off where people got killed. But that's the thing is, his restraint up until this point. This is when people try to make it a tit for tat. That's what really annoys me. Like, oh, he just unilaterally invaded. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, we are the kings of unilateral invasions. We had no reason to go in Iraq, right? We had no reason to be in Syria. We had no reason to be in Libya. We made shit up. Everything that you just said are reasons that Putin should have done what he did in 2014.
Right.
Right. But he didn't. And he didn't for 20 years. I mean, he's been in power about 20 years now, 22 years. Right. And there's a clip of Joe Biden running around on the internet that I saw a few times now in 1997, where he's warning that if we screw with the Ukraine, we're inviting a war with Russia. He's saying this as a senator in 1997. And now it's like, oh, oops, I don't remember what I said. And, he probably doesn't remember what he said, but, common sense just right out the window. And to act like, Putin is this unilateral evildoer. I mean, is he committing a war crime? Yeah, by invading it. Sure, absolutely. And I'm not for war anyway. But if you're gonna tell me that he just did it because he's a madman and he's got no reason, right? He has no concern. He shouldn't be concerned. And shame on the U.S. for taking a country that was probably not going to get into NATO anyway, right? And still running that as a threat to Putin. Oh, well, they're going to get into NATO. Well, they probably weren't going to get into NATO, right? But that's now we're here, So now moving forward, it's just. What do you see moving forward? Is there room to negotiate, or do you think we're going to actually put boots on the ground as far as the United States is concerned?
Well, I think that I just think like, what would the United States do if a hostile nation started putting bases along the Canadian border and along the Mexican border? I don't think the United States would take that, very, very kindly.
Right.
And of course, we both know this is all left over from the Cold War. And the Cold War never ended. People are like, Reagan knocked down the wall, or like Reagan took a hammer and knocked the whole wall down by himself.
Sure.
And, it just, Zelensky has been invited to speak in front of all these parliaments and in front of our own Congress to drum up really World War III is what he's trying to drum up, right? And I think it really all depends on what the United States does, of how it's going to commence.
Right.
Putin and Russia, even though they did start bombing, they were targeting military targets, not civilians. They're trying to be very careful to open up places where civilians can get out, right? They don't want, but of course, civilians are always a casualty of war. So it just like really depends on what the United States does. Now, I know the liberals here in the United States really want World War III as well. They're calling for no-fly zones and send more arms to Ukraine. Let's just like arm the crap out of NATO and Ukraine. Let's give more money to NATO and have a no-fly zone, which, would just absolutely be a disaster. And, we see they're blaming everything that's going wrong in the United States on Putin, which might be the reason for what just is happening right now, because they can blame hyperinflation, gas prices, and, everything else going wrong on Putin now. And, oh gosh, now we have to blockade Russian gas. So gas prices are just going to go through the roof.
Well, see, and that's what, go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, all kinds of shit, you know?
Yeah.
And so these liberals are saying, oh, I pay $20 a gallon if it meant that it was a free Ukraine or
Fuck
whatever.
you. Yeah.
I know, that's what I think too.
Yeah. Pay $20 a gallon for free Palestine, you fucking pricks.
Yeah. Or, you know, if you don't like it, buy an electric car. I just hate these people.
I do too.
Like so much. I can't afford to fill up my car, but I can spend 50 grand on an electric car. Right.
Right.
So, I just think that the ruling class, or the whatever we want to call them, Chavez called them the squalid ones. He wouldn't call them the ruling class. He called them esqualidos, the squalid ones.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that they have played the last 2 years like they're Stradivarius or something. You know, they've gotten the liberals so worked up about the COVID narrative and about dying and things, you know, whatever, is that we saw within a few days, like you said, they seamlessly went from hating a virus to hating Putin.
Right.
You know, because the same people who told them to hate a virus told them to hate Putin.
Well, and to your point, this is the hypocrisy and the science of it. I just watched Nancy Pelosi say that they're going to be cutting, because I thought we're in a pandemic. I thought, oh, you know, we needed, you know, more vaccines and tests. Well, we're going to cut that money out and tell people go fuck themselves and die because we need to give more money to Ukraine. That's what Pelosi said at a press conference with a straight face, and nobody in that room asked her why. Right. And to your point a second ago, when you're talking about this like hyperinflation, this is just the perfect excuse. This is where pisses me off about the so-called liberal in this country. It's the perfect excuse. Exxon just reported record profits. Chevron just reported record profits. Exxon last month paid out $4.5 billion in shareholder dividends. Right. So they take our subsidies because we gave them money during the pandemic. Then they raise the gas prices on us. And pre-pandemic, we had 50% of this country making under 30 grand a year. So without even asking a question, these idiots are like, I'll pay $20 a gallon. Like, well, fuck you. Why don't you go to Exxon's door and tell them to help the working class? But these assholes aren't part of the working class. Right. They're the ones that can afford, or they're the ones that don't ever drive anywhere. So, Stephen Colbert has a driver taken from his house to CBS or wherever the fuck he does his show. So he can say that. Right. He can say I'll pay $2 more a gallon. But, you know, there's people who can't even like fill up their car. Right. I mean, I pull up the pump all the time and I see partial fills all the time, you know, $5 or $6 or whatever. And, you know, the person's tank doesn't hold $5 or $6, you know, unless you're dropping. No, absolutely not. No. You know, and so it reminds me when I was first driving, when I didn't really have a job or anything, I used to take like a roll of pennies to the gas station, and that would actually put a gallon of gas in my car that I could drive for like 30 miles because it was a Volkswagen. Yeah. It reminds me of those days, you know, back in those days when, you know, and so this just proves the disdain of the liberals for the working class, because 100%. This literally has people going, well, I have to work, but now I'm working just to put gas in the tank. I'm not working to keep a roof over my head or keep food on the table or food on my family, as George Bush said. And, you know, it just really is a serious, but I think the COVID thing, the exploitation of the COVID thing was to cover up some kind of serious economic collapse. Sure. Because then they could print trillions and trillions and trillions, not print the money, but just transfer trillions and trillions. Like, oh yeah, you know, we need to send everybody 1,200. We need to send, you know, the airlines billions of dollars, but we're going to send, you know, these people here $1,200. So where does that money come from? Right. It just comes from computer. It's thin air. Clicks on the computer, right? Yeah. I watched. And they didn't think there was going to be hyperinflation. Right. And a few years back, I saw Ben Bernanke on 60 Minutes, and he was, you know, they were trying to explain, you know, how we weren't paying tax. Our taxes weren't reflecting the Iraq and Afghanistan war debt yet. Mm-hmm. And I forgot who it was. It was one of the ladies. And she said, well, then how's this money coming? And he literally puts his hand in the air and he just kind of taps. He goes, well, we just, you know, add zeros to this it's a different account. It's not like the budget. It's just a different account. And what did they do? They just added a bunch of zeros. And collectively, I think we saw 57 new billionaires during the COVID pandemic. Right. And you're sitting there going, interesting. And angers me so much about the narrative, and I've been online off and on last couple of days with people just trying to, pitch me the talking points that they saw on TV, and that it has nothing to do with oil and gas. It has nothing to do with like the fact that Nord Stream 2 got shut down before the invasion. Nord Stream 1 was already there. And Antony Blinken a few weeks back told the British or the German finance minister, when he said, wait, if we don't open Nord Stream 2, what do you expect us to do for oil and natural gas? He goes, just buy it from the United States. He goes, you guys are halfway across the world. He's like, well, just tax your people more and subsidize it. I'm like, wow, what a dickhead thing to say. Right.
Oh,
and meanwhile, we're going to throw the EU into the ice age because they're counting on Nord Stream 2. Right. And you got countries that won't go along with it. Turkey ain't going along with it. India's not going along with it. Pakistan's not going along with it. China's not going along with it. Right. We were talking off mic a second ago. Prince bin Salman, or as I like to call him, Shamalama Ding Dong, Prince Shamalama Ding Dong.
And what's his name? Mohammed bin Salman.
Yeah.
MBS.
Yeah. Mohammed bin Salman is the Saudi prince who killed who had Khashoggi killed, right?
Yeah, and Khashoggi.
You're right. And then 2 weeks ago they just set a new world record, 81 heads chopped off in one day. Yay! But they're our allies. They're humanitarians. So we talk about a dictator in Putin with a straight face. And people ignore the fact that the United States supports 73% of the world's dictators. I'm not saying what Putin did was, quote, right. What I'm saying is we are the moral superior of nobody. We have no right whatsoever to criticize anybody's invasion of anything.
Well, and talking about the economy and the dollar and stuff like that, we said off mic too that, Saudi Arabia is not taking Biden's call.
Neither are the Emirates.
And so and Saudi Arabia is reaching out to China.
They're accepting the petro yuan to buy Saudi oil. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to do it in dollars.
They thought if the U.S., if the dollar stops being the petrodollar, then we're truly screwed.
We are very screwed. Our
economy is truly screwed because that's the only thing, from what I've been reading, that is propping up the dollar. The only thing that props it up is confidence in it.
The confidence in the dollar we're good for because oil will never go away. And then secondly, the other part of that too is once the dollar stops being used as the petrodollar, two things are going to happen. A, we are going to be screwed. But also we won't be able to afford to sanction anybody because the dollar won't be the reserve currency. Right. So we can't sanction people and starve babies like we did in Iraq and Venezuela.
And so then it's a good thing.
100%. And that's what I'm saying. Okay. So let's flip that shit lib script on them. I'll pay $20 a gallon. Okay. I'll let my life suck for a while so that we can't sanction and kill babies.
Right.
But you're gonna be homeless. Exactly. Yeah. But if we're not sanctioning and killing babies all over the world, then maybe I'll feel better.
Well, and that's what I was like, this is my third interview of the day. So I'm feeling like very, you love me. What did Sally Field say when she,
you love me. You really love me.
Anyway, my first interview was with Press TV in Iran, and we were talking about what's going on in Yemen. And this man, the other person on the interview was actually in Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, talking about, hundreds of thousands of people killed, starving. And this is all from Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, and this is all from the United States supporting Saudi Arabia in its blockade and bombing and just atrocious war against this poor country, Yemen. And so I'm listening to him talk about what's going on. And then the guy asked me, like, what's going on in the United States? How's this going to affect the United States? And I said, well, because Saudi Arabia is also blocking, just think about it. They're blockading oil from getting into Yemen. Unfortunately, everything runs on oil. You can't cook without it. You can't turn your lights on, whatever. Everything is based on oil. So these people are starving. They're, their infrastructure is very compromised. People are dying. So many people have died. Children have died of starvation in Yemen. I can't even bear to think about it. And so what's happening in the United States? Oh, our gas is going up, And I was like, what needs to happen is the empire needs to collapse.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it's going
to. That would save Yemeni lives.
That would save millions of lives all literally.
I just started my list.
I mean, like in the Middle East, just alone, the Middle East in the last 20 years, we've killed 6 million people, right? Like I think 5%.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's
only 5% were actual combatants. 95% of them were civilians. We killed 6 million people without batting an eye. And then you see us, with people with their, Ukraine flags and everything, ignoring everything.
Never a Yemeni flag for the babies or Afghan. The United States is starving Afghan babies.
Yeah.
By holding its resources, and they were going to give the resources to the 9/11 families, which is so stupid because Afghanistan had nothing to do with 9/11. By the way,
that's
but
right.
But they've been paying for over 20 years for what's happening.
Right.
And what 3 or 4 years ago, my organization that existed before COVID, a Women's March on the Pentagon, we raised several $1,000s to send to Yemen for food aid, and we couldn't find any way to get it to Yemen without being arrested.
Wow.
There was everything was blocked from getting to Yemen.
Right.
But every fucking time you post anything on Facebook about Ukraine, you get this thing, you want to raise money for Ukraine relief?
Right.
So they wanted to raise money for Ukraine relief, but we can't get anything into places like Afghanistan or Yemen who actually need emergency food relief.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to your point a second ago, that's another thing that really is just pissing me off with the average shitlib is that they'll like we said a second ago, they'll cry about Ukraine. But, I don't see anybody, bitching about the 40, 50,000 people we killed in Venezuela with the newest batch of sanctions under Trump and Biden continued them. Right. How many kids have been suffering and dying in Iran? We've been sanctioning them for a long time. Right. And then Cuba and Syria, we destroyed that country. They have money, but they can't buy anything because we have sanctions on them. So they can't even get materials to rebuild. Right. We just keep doing. And if anybody listening to this show, and I've said this a million times to people, and it can't be said enough. If you think that the United States gives a fuck about human rights, you're an idiot.
That's right.
You're a fucking moron. You're just
so many times.
Yeah. I when I was eating lunch, and there's this one lady that I don't know how she got on my thing, but she did. And she started talking about how I put us in a little simple thing. I find that if I write at the USA Today level, most people get it. Right. So I said, if we were held to the same hypocritical metric that we hold everybody else, we would be sanctioned and not in any sporting events for the last 42 years. Right.
Right.
This lady came on and said, well, you can't prove that the United States is, guilty of war crimes because, and then I go, whoa. What are you calling a war crime? Because technically a non-defensive invasion, it's a war crime. Right. Sorry. Oopsie. That one thing alone.
And under Nuremberg conventions, it contains all the war crimes. Preemptive war.
Bingo.
Contains all the war crimes.
All of them. And then the other thing too, she refused to acknowledge any points that I brought up. I said, because I don't know, last I checked, dropping depleted uranium and phosphorus on civilians is a war crime. And we did that in Iraq, and we did that in Afghanistan, and cue the crickets. And then she said I was gaslighting. I'm like, okay, I'm going to block you before you put me in jail because I'm tired of getting. I checked her. I go, how the fuck did you get on my thing? And I looked, and we had no mutual friends. I'm like, oh, you're a fucking troll. Okay, I don't know how I added you, but I did. Maybe I was stoned or whatever. Yes, kids. Once in a while, I do take a hit of the reefer. So long story short, I blocked her before she could block me because I'm tired of going to Facebook jail with these assholes. And so, but that's the thing is that, like, and even locally here, I mean, people that I know here with a straight face, well, Zelensky is Jewish, so they can't have Nazis there. Really? Obama was black. Last I checked, the Proud Boys are rampant during the Obama years. I mean, we had racists and everything else going on. Black Lives Matter.
Plus, his positions were racist.
100%.
Obama's black, but he 100%. Was a racist.
As Cornel West famously said about Barack Obama, he was Wall Street's black mascot. That was it. And so, but this is where, because you've suffered from this crap. I mean, it just, what angers me is people have zero empathy about who actually goes to these things. It ain't your kids going, right? It's not your kids going, like if you're Nancy Pelosi's granddaughter or grandson or whatever, you're not going to Ukraine if we put boots on the ground, and the Russian.
Have you seen where a bunch of liberals have gone to Ukraine?
Yeah, and they found out the hard way. They got fucked. That? Yeah, I've seen that. They thought
they were like going to be on the Abraham Lincoln Brigade in Spain or something.
Yeah,
and they got like kidnapped and enslaved.
That's right. And it wasn't quite. So it wasn't quite George Orwell in Spain, now was it? Yeah. Fuck you. Gray Zone put out, no, not Gray. Richard Medders put out a video. This guy's like at an airport. He finally escaped. It was like a 7-minute.
I saw that.
Oh my God. And so far from what I could tell, his story checked out. There's a bunch of people that zoomed over there to, and then to find out that they got trapped. They're not getting the fuck out. Right. And because they're not American military, you can say that they're in violation of their visiting visa or their path, whatever. And the Ukraine, the American embassy in Ukraine ain't going to do jack or shit for you.
And they were making them like cannon fodder.
Yeah. Here's a magazine here's a magazine with 10 rounds. Yeah. Right.
Sure. Yeah. Just come visit Ukraine. We'll give you guns and stuff.
Here's a magazine with 10 rounds. Now go fight the Russian army. It's like, okay, you're gonna be like the guys in the last scene of Glory. You're gonna get mowed down by cannons. And honestly, I mean it from the bottom of my little black heart too. I'm like, kind of neener. That's what you get for being a dipshit.
Yeah, at least I don't want to see them die. Put their body on the lines for what they believed in, but what they believed in was intrinsically idiotic, and to believe anything that comes out of the legacy media or Washington D.C., like you said, you have to be a fucking moron to believe anything that comes out of there. And what I've been seeing is a lot of like famous liberals like Rob Reiner and some Democrats who are active on Twitter or whatever, call Putin a baby killer. And that just drives me over the moon.
You know what? It would not drive me over the moon as much if we would just shut the fuck up and take responsibility for what we've done over the last 100 plus years. But we don't.
Centuries.
Yeah, I mean, I'm being generous. I go back. Yeah.
How can we total up how many babies the United States has killed?
Oh,
literal babies.
I can just tell you civilian deaths. I don't know how many of them were babies, but I guarantee you a bunch of them were. Right.
Yeah.
It just. I mean, it like since at least 1898. That's what I'm saying when I'm being generous. I go to the Spanish-American War. It's usually my benchmark.
That was kind of when the U.S. started their foreign imperialism.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I mean, there was continental expansion, which was disastrous to the people who lived here before the white Europeans lived here. Continental expansion, a lot of devastation in Mexico, and the U.S. even tried to start a war with Canada before. It's just so I laugh, but it's not funny. But I just gotta laugh so I don't go blithering insane like Pelosi or something.
Well, here's the thing. To your point, though, you like sometimes I'll laugh, I'll chuckle, but the only reason I do it is because the childish denial of our responsibility as a country and a government is what pisses me off. When I got people saying, "Well, Putin's a prick and he shouldn't," is that really? Did you see Rocky IV again? Because seriously, like that is not even remotely true. Putin's a prick, so he's a dictator. Therefore, we've had a ton of pricks run this country. I guess we've been run by dictators.
Yeah, a rogues gallery of pricks.
Excuse me. And the last I checked, Putin was elected anyway. And if he was if he was this big dictator, he wouldn't last in office. That's the thing. It's no longer the Soviet Union. That's what people don't understand. Right. It hasn't been the Soviet Union for 30 fucking years. NATO should have been dismantled as soon as the Soviet Union crashed. Within 6 months, there should have been no NATO.
And we wouldn't be where we are right now talking about this stuff.
100%.
You know,
100%.
yeah, we wouldn't have to talk about this right now. But another thing, Abe, what I think this all stems mostly from is the liberal idea that has been discredited that Putin caused Trump to beat Clinton.
I know. I'm still having that. I'm still having that discussion.
It's all about Russiagate.
Yeah,
it's all about Russiagate.
Yeah.
And so it's been discredited. It didn't happen. Never happened. They can't believe their shitty warmongering hag of a candidate lost. You know, she lost. If she would have campaigned in the states she lost, she might have won. But she just thought she was too good to campaign in these traditionally blue states that went for Trump. And besides that, she's just one of the most terrible people in the world.
She is. But also, what was she going to say? That's the other thing, too. What was she going to say? Her big message was America's always been great. You going to say that in Indiana and Pennsylvania and Wyoming and Ohio, where Trump was visiting those places 3 times a month, making fun of you? And she couldn't go there and say, oh, yeah, Obama's policies are awesome. Let's keep them going. Well, not if you're in those states, because Bush and Obama fucked those people. And those are states that voted for Obama twice, by the way. Right. But again, with the liberal, and I say liberal because it's basically a blue Republican, they can't take responsibility for anything. Rather than taking responsibility and saying, yeah, you know what? We ran a shitty candidate who ran a shitty campaign, and she had more baggage than Cleopatra going on vacation. But hey, it was Russia's fault that she lost. Really? She won the popular vote by like 5 million and still lost the electoral college. Where was your big whiz-bang smarty pants people there? Panetta and all these people. How did you lose to a game show host? Oh, I know.
Yeah, it wasn't Hillary's first rodeo either.
No,
and I think they know the rules.
Listen, if you're boxing, you know the rules of boxing. If you drive on the freeway, you know the rules. If you run for office in anywhere in the world, the popular vote is the thing. But if you run for office in the United States, you have to win the presidency with the electoral college. It doesn't give we've done that 5 times in this country. Right. 5 presidents have been elected with the electoral college having lost the popular vote. Al Gore's kind of because they kind of stole it from him. But still, technically, he did lose, even having won the popular vote. Where are these grand mal liberals who are saying we need to get rid of the electoral college? At least start that conversation. They say it for what it is. It's a slave day holdover. Oh, you'll never get that. Yeah. Well, gay marriage is a thing now. It was wrong 15 years ago. It was illegal 15 years ago. Now you can do it. So you start talking about it and start getting it in there, but the Democrats will never do that because it's a talking point for them. They'll never do anything about a woman's right to choose. They'll never do anything about that.
No,
because they got a Democratic Congress, they got a Democratic president. Why don't you just pass a bill in the House, get the Senate to approve it, put it on Biden's desk, he signs it, bam, we just fixed the women's right to choose thing. No more Handmaid's Tale like here in Texas. Or, what they're doing up in Oklahoma. None of that shit anymore. Are they going to do it?
Plus healthcare. No. I mean, how come we don't have single payer healthcare?
Right.
Especially coming out of this
pandemic.
How much billions, trillions of dollars could the U.S. have saved if we were in a single payer system? But it's not for spending the resources on the people. Like you said, there was all these billionaires created. Yep. There was a tremendous transfer of wealth from the bottom to the top during those last 2 years. Yep. It's exactly by design. That's why they don't do it, because it's not like they didn't just like wake up, just like Putin didn't wake up one day and decide to invade Ukraine just because, he didn't sleep well the night before.
Right.
This is planned. This is, I think I look at Corona, the whole 2 years of Corona, almost like one of those bubbles, like the .com bubble, the housing bubble, things like that, where at the end, the rich are even richer and the poor are even poorer.
Well, and that's also too, because capitalism can never fix the problems it creates because it's too expensive.
And it doesn't want to.
It doesn't want to because it's mostly because it's too expensive. If they could do it for free or cheap and look good, they would do it, but they don't. That's why we still have oil spills. Capitalism is never going to fix that. We have 3 islands of plastic in the world now that are the size of Delaware. Okay.
Yeah.
And no one's it's everything. Well, let's go to electric cars. Okay, well, it's much pollution to mine lithium and borium and all those things that you need for batteries. And you know who they're going to make do it? They're going to make child labor do it for who are like 7, 8 years old, in wherever, right? That's why they kicked out Evo Morales, because he had grown-ups.
I remember what Elon Musk said then.
We can coup whoever we want.
Happen.
Yeah, that was the first. Yeah, that was the first time. And then when the Bolivians took the government back, he said we can coup whoever we want. And I was like, well, motherfucker, no, we can't, because I didn't vote for you, asshole. And I swear to God, these are the people that, the finance bros, the so-called human rights bros. I call them human rights bros because they don't know jack or shit what they're talking about. Who's against human rights? Nobody. But the United States has never done anything for human rights. It's always been for money. That's it. And that's how.
And the astronaut bros. Don't forget the astronaut bros.
Oh my God. I had a libertarian guy on my show about 2 months ago, and he was going on about Bezos. And I said, well, then I don't know how you as a libertarian can think it's cool for Bezos to get $9 billion, which is about a third of the NASA budget, to fly a cock rocket in space. If he wants to fly that on his own, that's great. Why do I have to pay him the money? And this guy goes, oh, he did that? Uh-huh. Yeah, he did that. And with that same $9 billion, he bought MGM. He bought MGM UA the same week we gave him $9 billion. So he basically funded his purchase of MGM UA and or a good portion of his cock rocket budget, right? He's worth $180 billion. Yeah, why do I have to give him $9 billion?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right? And this guy's like, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, this is what pisses me off about you finance bros. You always do that shit. Well, he just created a really good business. Yeah, maybe he did. But now he's using his powers for evil, right? Fucking prick sits on a Pentagon board. He bought a newspaper. Has the Washington Post ever printed anything about Amazon and the minimum wage issue? No. No. It's maddening. And it's maddening when you talk to these people who, and this is what the liberal loves to say this shit. Well, those red staters don't have an education. If you consider your education watching MSDNC and Rachel Madcow, then I don't know what to tell you. Mm-hmm. And wherever you went to school, dear liberal who's listening, your school should serve you a cease and desist letter to quit saying you went there, because you sound like a fucking idiot. And I'm done ranting. No, it's just fucking maddening. Well, and they tell you in the first 2 minutes of a conversation, well, just so you know, I majored in political science at Yale. Okay. You had to tell me that in 2 minutes because you already didn't have 5 fucking facts at your fingertips that I brought up to you. I mean, really? I'm a guy with a day job and a mic. How do I know this? And you, Mr. Political Science, doesn't know this. All right, Mrs. Political Science. They love saying that. Well, I majored in pre-law. Okay, fuck yeah. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah, who gives a shit? You still think sanctioning Venezuela is a good guy because you still think Maduro's a dictator because you know he won the goddamn election.
Except now they want Venezuela's oil.
Suddenly he's the president. Suddenly he's the president.
Suddenly,
I would love to be a fly on the wall.
Somebody on Twitter say Maduro just declared Juan Guaido the president of the U.S. the legitimate president of the United States. And so now, they want Venezuelan oil, so now they have to actually talk to the legitimate government of Venezuela, because what's Juan Guaido going to do? He can't say, okay, you guys can have this oil.
Right.
And so yeah, that's also what I found very hilarious about this whole thing.
Oh, I found it. Yeah.
Saudi Arabia won't talk to Biden, and now they're reaching out to this evil dictator, Maduro.
And Iran too.
Yeah, and they've been trying to overthrow the government. Well, Iran, we know since 1979.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Was it the Islamic?
Yeah, it was
revolution there.
Yeah, that's right.
And then here in Venezuela since 1999.
Yeah. And especially the last several years where we try to coup 5 times and try to assassinate the guy a couple of times. I mean, I would love to be a fly on the wall in that conversation. Right? You got the U.S. delegation showing up, and they're sort of like, yeah, you didn't think we were serious, did you? We tried to kill you twice. God, come on, we were kidding. We want to see if you're fast. Want to see if you're fast on your feet. We didn't mean to make you dodge bullets. It was just a joke, right? And we tried to coup them 5 times during Trump's era alone. We pulled 5 failed
Right.
coups. And Juan Guaido, that little twerp, is under investigation for missing $90 million, apparently.
Right.
And we're still calling him the and Anthony Blinken still calls him the interim president. And I'm kind of going, interesting, because I'm sorry, not Anthony Blinken, Ned Price, the spokesperson for the State Department. He's still calling him the interim president.
He's NED, right?
He's Ned
Price.
Ned Price is he was NED back in the day. He's now the press. He's like the Jen Psaki of the State Department. He was NED for about 10, 11 years. And then, he resigned the way Trump was prosecuting the war, because that's supposed to be some moral high ground. Right. And now he's this lurpy, douchey spokesperson. Yeah. He's a spokesperson. He blows smoke up your asses. And he's not even good at it.
No.
But yeah, they're saying he's the interim president. I'm going, that's kind of funny, because the delegation is not down there talking to the interim president guy. They're down there to talk to the real president guy who actually won some elections.
Right. And who has power.
Right. And
this is an interesting position that of Venezuela's in too. If Venezuela actually has actually has the upper hand in what's happening now. And if I were Venezuela, and they're probably happy I'm not, I would tell the United States to go fuck themselves. But if they can negotiate lifting of sanctions, and
those people need it.
Things that could help Venezuela, plus but there's a big wrench in this. Venezuela and Russia are allies.
That's right.
So like you said, to be a fly on the wall of that conversation,
I would love to. I would love to.
A very extraordinary.
I would love to. And I speak
Venezuela
Spanish too.
Has recognized Venezuela. Oh, you do? Mm-hmm. Venezuela has recognized Donetsk and Luhansk,
Donbass,
breakaway republics.
Yeah,
and they're one of the few countries in the world that has recognized that, and they are allies of Russia, because that's what happens when the U.S. sanctions these countries.
Yeah,
they have to go to other China, Iran, Cuba, other places have to work together and develop their own strategies for survival.
Yep.
Under these sanctions. And Russia had a lot. The U.S. was able to shut down a lot of things in Russia, but China, I think, has developed all their own social media, their own Amazon, their own things that, so what? We don't care. And they have strategically used their power and their resources diplomatically to build these allies.
Sure.
Where the U.S. doesn't know how to use shit like that.
They've been doing belts and roads for years now, and they got allies all over Africa. They got allies all over the place, because they're not bombing anybody. They're just building shit. And hey, do you mind selling it for 30% less than you do the United States? Sure, no problem. We got a new school and a couple of hospitals and roads. Okay, yeah, we'll sell it to you 30% cheaper than the U.S. and no loans. We do that jackal bullshit where we do these high interest payday loans to poor countries to buy U.S. equipment, and China doesn't do that. And then everyone wonders why they're making friends and influencing people. Did you see last week where India bought oil from Russia and they paid for it in rupees, not dollars? They bought 3 million barrels of oil from Russia last week, and they paid for it in rupees, not dollars. And Russia, to not use the dollar, gave them a 20% discount.
Well, and this is the whole thing too, is these idiots in the United States, with the gas prices jacking up, it's only helping Russia.
That's right.
Because Russia sells oil too. So they're getting the same price per barrel as everybody else.
And guess what?
Oh my gosh, you mean that we can't sell 1% of our oil to the United States? Oh God, we'll just sell 3 million barrels to India. They'll sell it everywhere else.
Yeah.
So and Germany is also we're strategically allies with the United States, but we can't harm our own country.
That's right.
So we're not going to harm our own country.
But we don't care. Anthony Blinken told that guy.
He told that guy. You know what? we'll pay more money for gas and we'll let German people suffer. And the people of the Ukraine suffer so the Ukraine can have democracy. And frickin' Zelensky just made 11 political parties illegal in Ukraine because they got such a great democracy there.
Right. And he also shut down 3 television stations and put their management in jail. And the shit lives here cheered.
Because it's such a great democracy there.
Right. And we did the same thing here. We shut down RT. Right. And overnight you lost Chris Hedges and Lee Camp and cool people like that. You know, and Sputnik. And the people are going, oh my God. Yeah, well, yeah, yay. Why are you saying yay to censorship? What kind of fucking toddler child are you? 3-year-olds. No, you're not supposed to do that. 3-year-olds. No, you're not supposed to do that.
Right. Well, they can't. That's because these liberals can't support their ideas. They don't want to hear anybody else's ideas.
Right.
That might like compromise their very liberal positions on things. They don't want that to happen.
And they hate being called blue Republicans. That's what I call them. They get pissy when I say that. And that's what you guys are. You guys are blue Republicans. That's it. I mean, look at Biden's first year. He hasn't done jack or shit, anything different. In fact, he's expanded and exacerbated all of Trump's policies. All the belligerent crap toward China and Russia, that's Trump. And he came in and did the same thing. He didn't change a thing. Right. I mean, and he was going to try to pull a coup in Venezuela. Because I know for a fact that when he took office, he had $30 million left over from the previous COVID bill that Trump signed. And that was $30 million earmarked for another coup attempt in Venezuela. Right. And then that just kind of sat. I was going, that's interesting. And then all of a sudden now I'm like, oh, wow. A 6th coup would have made that conversation really awkward.
What do you think about like all the money the United States has spent, NID? Wait, what am I saying? The NED.
NED, yeah.
And the NAID.
Right.
And NAID. And the military and covert operations. How many tens of millions of dollars have they spent trying to overthrow the government when they could have just reached out to them like they're doing now and just bought the oil at a fair price?
Yeah.
But they don't want to buy the oil at a fair price.
They want it all. They want it all.
Yeah.
They want it all. And my uncle passed away a few years back, but him and my dad left the Middle East at the same time. And my dad ended up in Rio. My uncle ended up in Caracas. Right. And in the 80s, he was still living there. And he would tell my dad, it's like, dude, the poverty here is ridiculous. He owned a couple of dime stores like Woolworths kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. He's like, he goes, the poverty here is ridiculous. It's like, we got a 50% poverty rate. He goes, we got, yep. You know, and this is in the 80s, right? And nobody seemed to give a shit as long as they said they were capitalists, and Chevron and Exxon got their oil for free.
And almost like a 90% illiteracy.
100%. 100%. Like my cousins that were raised there were, quote, elite because they went to school and could read. Right.
Yeah.
And but that's how it was when Chavez took over. Right. And paid a real wage, built affordable housing, nationalized the oil so he could afford to do that. Right. Mm-hmm. We decided to start fucking with him, including trying to kidnap the guy. And, you know, the one thing Venezuela got lucky on is they always had the army. If you don't have the army, you don't have a coup. And for some reason, their guys are loyal. They are loyal.
Because Chavez was in the army.
Pardon?
Chavez was in the military. Was in the military.
Yeah.
And he got very popular by trying to overthrow the president before him. Was it Obrador? I don't remember. I wrote a book about it called Social, what was it called? Socialism, a Love Story.
Okay. You know what I'll do? I'll put that in the show notes. Yeah.
It's called Revolution, a Love Story.
Okay.
It's called Revolution, a Love Story. It was about the Bolivarian Revolution.
Okay.
And Chavez, while he was a member of the military, tried to overthrow the president that was giving all of these benefits to U.S., international oil companies, not spreading the wealth to the people of Venezuela.
Sure.
And so Chavez tried to overthrow this guy and got put in prison. And just when he was in prison, he got more and more popular and was able to come out and win the presidency and institute a new constitution. Mm-hmm. And all these social programs and human rights are guaranteed in the Constitution. Right. So it doesn't matter if Venezuela is sanctioned or Venezuela is not getting a lot of money for its oil. They still have to provide these social programs.
That's right. And that's not anything we could dream of doing here or allowing another country to do, which is what people get pissy about China, because for the last good 10 years now, they've been doing the roads and belts or the belts and roads in it, like real steady. And they have one base outside of China. It's on the other side of Eritrea, right? Just south of Ethiopia. Uh-huh. It's like they have
driving me crazy.
No, they have one base outside of China. We have 900 bases outside of the United States, right? And
I think Russia only has one or two outside of Russia.
They've got
in Syria.
Yeah, they have like 9, and like 7 of them are in Syria, right? And the rest are all like I think one is I think one is down in Africa, and they have another one a little more toward China. It's like a 9. It's like 9 bases, 10 bases. I looked it up about 3 weeks ago. Literally like 7 of them are in Syria. Not even close to what we're doing. But China has one base in Eritrea, and we're losing our fucking mind, right? But no, that's what China has been doing. They've been allowing these countries to keep their resources, pay a living wage, create programs like what you're talking about. And
and outside the World Bank, you were talking about the economic hitman aspect. So they don't have to go to the World Bank to get, like you said, these like payday loans that are going to ultimately destroy the country.
That's right. And that's what we do. And that's what, and then, you have an asshole like Trump saying these are shithole countries. It's really funny. Like, all the kids at the border and everything that we've had here in the United States, what country's missing from that lineup? Nicaragua. There are no Nicaraguans trying to escape Nicaragua, right? It's all Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, every country that we fucked, right? And say what you want about Daniel Ortega, but he's been doing a great job. And guess what? They have food, they have resources, and they just made a deal with China, right? So I'm like, yay! It's man, it's coming to an end, and it's going to be painful. But this is what makes me mad about what we're talking about. If the dollar crashes, which I would not mind seeing because of what we've just been talking about, but the United States would find a way for us to starve our asses off and still have this bullshit going on, right? We'll be like World War I Germany, like taking wheelbarrows of dollars to get a loaf of bread. Right. But the goddamn oligarchs and the president, Nancy Pelosi, Shaky Pelosi, and Mitch McConnell, the turtle, all these people, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fucking fine. And then that's when you're going to have a revolution, a real one, and
Bill
not just
Gates and Bezos and Musk. They're all going to be. They'll be okay.
Yeah, they'll go on the cock rocket and they're done, and that's fine. But people here are going to throw. There's this Scottish economist. Let's start wrapping up here. But there's this Scottish economist I like quite a little bit. His name is Mark Blythe. Have you ever heard him? He teaches at the Watson Institute. He's got this really thick Scottish accent. And honestly, I think he's just a frustrated comedian, because every time I see him interviewed, he just says funny shit, and he's just like, what did he say? He goes, and you better watch yourself, because the Hamptons are a low-lying beach. It's not a defensible position. So when you've got the most armed population on earth with their Sea-Doos and speedboats coming at the Hamptons, and he's just going off and like it's Braveheart or something, and you're just like, he's an economist.
And we are the most armed nation on earth. Thank goodness.
Yeah. But and he was saying this 5 years ago.
Have you ever watched like movies from the Depression?
Yeah.
Era movies where they're all like dressed really nice and they're at parties and opulent wealth. And I told my mom, when I was a little kid, I said, you always talk about how poor you were in the Depression. Look at these people. How come these people weren't poor?
Right.
Who's telling me the right story? Hollywood or you? And that's exactly the way it is now.
It's like Friends, isn't it? They work at a coffee house or something, and they live in this 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in Midtown. Right. And one's a part-time.
It was rent controlled from her grandma, I think, or something like that. That's the way they explained it.
Oh, they did explain it once. Okay. I only seen maybe 10 episodes. I was like, how the fuck do these people live?
It was Monica's grandma's apartment.
Oh, okay. See,
they don't know that Monica's grandma doesn't live there anymore or whatever, something like that. So it was rent controlled. It was
see, folks, you're getting some Friends lore here, not just this world. But
there were also a bunch of privileged assholes too.
Yeah, well,
except for Phoebe.
Yeah, because she was the only one that like she was like a soothsayer or something, right? Like she was just trying to make it.
Like an orphan or something. The rest of them came from rich
rich families, right? Yeah. So anyway, but well, listen, Cindy, I know you it sounds like you've had an action-packed day. You know, I'm glad you made time to come on the show.
Talk a lot.
Talk a lot. Well, you know, one conversation at a time, one punch at a time, one round at a time, right? That's hopefully.
Well, I just want to Cindy Sheehan Soapbox. I wrote a recent article that I actually worked on for a week, and it's called "Protecting Democracy, My Ass," or how liberals love to swallow Democrat propaganda. And so that explains a lot of what's happening in Ukraine. Like what you said, these people don't give a shit about human rights in Ukraine. Biden does not, not Biden, but what Biden represents. They don't want peace talks. They don't want this to be, they don't want a peaceful resolution to this, because they're selling billions of dollars in arms to whatever.
NATO. To NATO.
It's just... it's profitable, and they got to keep their rich people rich. And so they don't want a solution, and they don't care how many Ukrainians have to die or how many Russians have to die or whatever. So to think that this is some kind of humanitarian, and that's how they sold a lot of our wars, humanitarian interventions, right?
Yeah.
All these tyrants and authoritarians and people killing their own people, when the United States, like you said, is master of all this. They're the masters of all this bullshit.
And that's the thing that pisses me off is I'm not, people act like I'm defending, the invasion. No, it shouldn't have happened. But to sit there and act like we have a right to say fucking anything. We killed between Korea and Vietnam, we killed 6 million people.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm trying to figure out what else could Putin have done. There's actually thousands of Russian speakers being killed.
Yeah. 20,000 so far in the last 8 years. Yeah, 20,000 so far.
And so that, like, talking and having Minsk agreements and things like that didn't help. And the neo-Nazi element, the right-wing extremist nationalists in Ukraine were getting more powerful.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think, what else could Putin have done besides what? And maybe there, like I said, I'm not defending anybody being killed, and I don't like this when it happens, but I can't think of anything else that Putin could have done.
We pushed him.
And so... yeah, he was. Well, what if they started just slaughtering all the expats in Mexico, all the expat Americans in Mexico?
Mm-hmm.
We'd lose our shit. Would the United States do? Would the United States be all like, oh, I don't know, let's go to the table and talk about this? I don't think so.
No.
But, and I'm not I'm not a supporter of any powerful state leader, because obviously Putin has been there a long time. He's consolidated a lot of power. He was ex-KGB, but as a stable force on the world, he's been more of that than the United States has, for 100%. Sure, or Ukraine 100%. Has, for sure, or the EU or NATO. And so I'm not saying that I've been encouraging Putin to invade. I've been grateful for Putin for not invading for all these years, right?
Yeah.
So I just know that if the United States escalates anymore, then we might not even have this forum to talk next week. We might all be gone from nuclear annihilation, and nobody wants that.
Well, nobody wants that, but the shitlibs don't seem to mind that that's something that's on the table. I've been
asking them that since 2016. Would you rather have Hillary Clinton lose the election or World War III?
And they would rather have World War III.
Yeah,
they would rather. The shitlibs would rather have World War III.
If she had won, we might not even be here to this day.
Oh, because she was a total hawk. She was, and she had blood on her hands too. That's the other thing. She had blood on her hands, and people love to forget that part. That woman had Libya. She had so much blood on her hands, and she voted for every ward as a senator. So, but and then
in blood.
100%. And then to your point a second ago, when we were talking about NATO, again, this is about business, because NATO has a mandate to spend of 2% of their GDP has to be spent buying U.S. weapons, right? Well, ever since Russia invaded Ukraine, that spend is up to 3 to 5% now. So now all these countries that were spending 2% of GDP are now spending 3 to 5% of GDP. I already know that Britain is fucking with their healthcare system. Britain's been privatizing a ton of stuff. And they've got doctors and nurses that haven't had a raise in a while because of between Boris Johnson and the last idiot woman that was in there. They've been privatizing NIH, right? Well, now if they're still a NATO nation, they're not in the EU, but they're still a NATO nation. So if they're going to be required to spend 3 to 5%, even though they got their own army, that's a lot of money.
Right.
You think it's going to come out of the military? It's going to come out of education and health. You tell me.
Right.
It's depressing, man. I mean, I'm trying to maintain some modicum of hope. I'm a dark guy generally, so this isn't good for me.
No,
it is not. It is what it is. But hey, listen. Good.
Go to Cindy Sheehan soapbox.
Oh yeah, well, I'm going to put that in the notes. I'm also going to put your article in the notes because I'm going to read it, and I want to make sure people read it. Folks, my guest has been Cindy Sheehan, the host of Cindy Sheehan's Soapbox, and also Protecting Democracy My Ass, the new article that's on the Cindy Sheehan Soapbox blog. That's hard to say. That's almost like she sells by the seashore. The Cindy Sheehan Soapbox. You got to say it like Jim's Cagney, and then you got to Cindy Sheehan Soapbox. Say, yeah. Well, guys, again, we welcome support of the show, thebittertruth.info. And as always, if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.